So did you have a question? So can we get to Malcolm from the School Governing Body Foundation, yeah?
I've got a question about where do the children who are already home language English speakers fit into the pattern? What do you do with them?
Oh, that's lovely. Sure. And we have many of those because of our models, very good Model C schools, ex-Model C schools in Joburg, and you have the similar situation in the Cape. Those children are probably learning Xhosa here as a first additional language. In our schools, they're learning Zulu as a first additional language because of an activist parent like me who shouted and screamed 15 years ago. Otherwise, they would only have Afrikaans. But let's take your example. And so here I have my two English speakers in the classroom. That's their home language. But I make very sure that they are using the textbook that has, in your school, English and isiXhosa, right? So they'll have the Xhosa and the English. Xhosa is their subject anyway. So when the teacher, me, dealing with all my languages here, buddies them up, they're going to be buddied together. Look, you can use the buddy system in many ways. I'm trying desperately hard to simplify a complicated situation here. But if I put my two English speakers together here, when everybody else reads in their home language, and then they check read in English. Something that we try to teach matrics to do still, that you don't just read the question, you read it twice. You read everything twice. So it's read, check, read. Well, you're going to read, okay, in English, and we would like you to try and check read in Xhosa, okay? You'll battle, I'm sorry my darlings, you'll battle in the beginning until you really are learning your subject well. But it means that instead of just learning Xhosa in the Xhosa room, they are learning Xhosa in every single lesson. Their maths, their science, the whole lot. And even if it's just at the level of reading. So we do teach different techniques for handling those English kids. That's okay, but for the others, it's all about you read in your Xhosa, you check read in English. So you've got two kinds of understanding. We say two. My grade ones used to love it. I taught maths, and I suddenly found myself in the matric numeracy grade 1. They would love it. I said, you've got your definition to learn. 2L equals 2U. That means two languages gives you two ways of understanding. That is empowering. You've got two ways of learning the same idea. Okay, does that answer your question?
Okay. So we have to remember we've got also Vuyo and Krista. So if anybody's got questions for Vuyo, we've heard lots from Margie, but let's hear from the other people. Yes, Sybil.
I like the idea that Margie is sharing with us today, but I think the challenge I foresee is with the textbooks that we have are written in English or isiXhosa, but they're not mixed. So how can we meet that challenge of... I like the idea of Nalibali. We've got Nalibali project that is taking place in our schools right now that we've implemented. I'm sure they're trying to implement that idea because we've got stories that are written, the very same story in English and isiXhosa that are delivered into our schools. But I haven't seen textbooks that are like that in that way.
Well, you've got the readers for a start. You've got grade 1, 2, 3 foundation phase at least. You've got the Kagiso readers where it's identical material. And it just means that you buy double books. Every child has the book in English and their own language. Okay? As far as maths books are concerned, I got them specially made for our original multilingual study by Macmillan. They produced all their foundation phase stuff for us, nice textbooks. And just the point is that most of the publishers have at least got the translations done in foundation phase, where our fight is beyond that. But they just have to put the two texts together. It's hardly any more expensive to put two texts. You don't have to duplicate on the pictures or the diagrams. You just put double text. And then you code color so that every language group, then you just come up and fetch the books for their group in their particular pair of languages. Okay, does that help? But let me give you the exciting thing is that at the end of our last MEC's term of office, after the Gauteng language and maths strategy, which ran for about 2 years and ran into trouble. At the end of it, what was coming out, and I was saying, hooray, hooray, nobody's been listening to me, but it's coming out of the facts. She commissioned Wits University to produce bilingual maths material for foundation phase, grade 1 to 3 at least, for about all the schools on the project, about 150 failing schools. So they produced it. So Gauteng produced it in bilingual format. It's been done. Material is there. So the models are there. It just means somebody has to say to the publishers, go for it. Because every time I've talked to publishers, it's been like, we would do the bilingual, but we've got no government support. If government is not going to go for it, we've not got the market. But if government goes for it, if we can just get government on board, and I believe we do it through getting excited principals on board, showing in pilot schools what can be done, then the publishers will follow. Look, there's another thing, the national workbooks. Those are in all languages right up to grade 6, right? So all we have to do is just squeeze the department to say, I've got X number of Tswana kids, X number of Pedi kids, X number of Xhosa kids, etc. Please, I want the materials in English and in those numbers for them, so that every child gets the workbook, the English workbook there, so they can all be writing in that like everybody else, but they've all got their own workbook in their own language, and they can see the two languages next to each other. Get the idea. We're saying to parents as well, we understand why you want English from grade 1, and I support that. I support that because it makes multilingual classes possible. And we've got to get away from these apartheid schools that we're still sitting with in our townships in Gauteng. It's bizarre. But the point is that you've got to say to parents, English is not enough. Your kids must be able to supplement the English with their own language, right? So give them the 2 books.
So what I'm hearing Margie is doing here is she's challenging us. She's challenging Sabelo. So Sabelo, unfortunately, is right in the hot seat. Now he's going to be a leader here. He has no option, Sabelo. We have high expectations. We're not going to do this low expectation thing. We have high expectation of Sopakama Primary. So Sabelo is going to be the leader. And he's going to do this at his school. Somehow, miraculously, it's going to happen. He's going to get all those mothers from Alcana involved, and he's going to get Irene to help go talk to my school to get funding for the extra workbooks, and he's going to bring some English teachers, tutors in to work with your teachers so that they can teach in English and they can speak well and they don't have to. So Sabella's going to do lots of things, but Sabelo needs about 5 friends, 5 other principals around the Western Cape who's going to work with him so that the 5 of you can figure this out together and say, oh my goodness, we're trying this and this doesn't work, and then we get Margie on the phone and say, Margie, we need help here. And then Margie's going to, so that we can show leadership. We're being asked to lead, guys. We're not being asked to kind of sit back and next year we'll have the same conversation. So, oh, shame, we didn't get that one right, and it's still a problem. What's happening at the moment isn't working. And so we can continue to moan and groan about it isn't working, or we can start to do things differently. And I just want to quickly tell you something that's been really interesting for me. So, Margie, we have 25,000 schools in the country. You've heard me say that many times. 5,000 of them are working very well. That's the well-resourced schools. Yeah, 5,000. We know them in Cape Town. We know their names. We know where they are, Westerford and Cape and Camps Bay High, and we know the names. 20,000 of our schools are struggling because they've got language issues and they've got resource issues and all that stuff. But you know what we've been doing in South Africa? We've been studying failure. So we write report after report about what's not working in the 5,000, or in the 20,000. But we don't say what's working in the 5,000. So what we know is working in the 5,000 is the language issue has been resolved. Now, it's easier when you've got a whole group of kids, but maybe in a year's time, Sabelo, we're going to study Sopakama. We're going to study success. We're stopping all this studying failure nonsense. So we want to invite you to be part of the solution and help us create some success, some new ways of doing this. Who's in? Who's going to work with Sabella on this? Vusi and Sabella. So now we've got two. Now Vusi has Charity working with him. Sabella has Irenee, so poor Charity and Irenee, they're going to spend hours and hours and hours figuring this out.
I'm sitting down behind Mr. Vusi and
Sabella.
Easterplaat. I'm sitting with 590 learners in my school, which 400 is foreigners from Zimbabwe, Malawi, the whole Tito.
So you have many different
I have the
languages.
same scenario. But you know what I find difficult to come by is, I like the idea that you said Kagiso must come on board, but how do we turn the government's arm to not to go Kagiso route? I'm forced to do the Oxford reading scheme on foundation phase. So, and it's all, the content is related to nothing that my children can relate to.
So the fact of the matter is that will change when principals start to take strong leadership.
But how?
No, like in sessions like this, we're tweeting. I've been tweeting Helen Zille the whole afternoon.
Oh, right, good.
Helen, want you to pay attention. Sorry, go. I don't want you to
Okay, thank you. I also want to join Isabella.
So now you've got three.
Yes.
And you are you part of
Mpumelelo, yes, I'm a PFP member from Stellenbosch.
Who's your partner?
Vanessa
Vanessa Page. So Vanessa and Charity and Irenee are now in a partnership with the three of you. Any more principals who want to be part of this program?
But I also wanted to say, I don't know if the invitation from Mrs. Zill's office went to all schools. Because I've been to her office more than 3 times. He invites principals, and the challenge is that she wants to know more from principals. What are the challenges?
So next time you say you've got, Yolanda also wants a chance to come. Because Yolanda wants to come and tell a story. It's not useful for Yolanda to just have this group. She wants to go to Mrs. Zille's office. Yeah, Yolanda? So please invite, can you take Yolanda's details? And next time when...
Are we?
Will you? And Subella's also, so he wants to work with you. And Vusi also wants to
I'll check the next meeting because they wanted to know, for example, the curriculum advisors, the use of it in schools, if they are working and so forth.
I like that.
And we had a challenge of the Funza Lusaka Pasar holders that the department says we must take by force, whereas we could headhunt for better teachers we want. So
in the interest of time, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're gonna be our link to Helen, Twitter, anybody else who has a link to?
I just want to say also we as a special school, because the special schools here in the Western Cape are ignored, especially the intellectually challenged.
Which school
Special
are you?
schools.
Which one?
Nompumelelo in Gugulethu.
In Gugulethu.
Yes.
Ernest, have you spoken to Beauty yet? Okay, so.
We are almost forgotten by everybody.
No, soon you won't be forgotten. Promise. Guaranteed.
I like the idea of people working together, but I wanted to make a specific point about the many languages and so on, because if there are many languages at this school and there are many languages at that school and many languages at that school, there must be languages that are similar across these schools. So maybe there are a bunch of Portuguese immigrants in this school and in this school and in this school. And what I've seen in Germany, for example, when they had an influx of immigrants from a number of countries, they would have, for example, a Polish afternoon at one school, and all the other schools would bring their kids and they would use their resources in the community. So maybe a parent who was a teacher in Poland or who's very well spoken in Polish or something like that. So they use the resources in the community, and the schools then, so each school isn't trying to do its own thing in terms of coping with these multilingual learners. Because I'm quite sure that in this multilingual kind of environment, that there would be sources that schools could share. And they could be community sources, or they could be a teacher who comes from one of those countries himself or herself.
who could then help these learners. Because if you can take an afternoon in a week to strengthen home language proficiency and literacy, that's going to help you with English. That's the whole reason for this reading and checking reading. And then there are all these companies who want to bring volunteers to South Africa, and they come from all these countries. So we need to find ways of the creative solutions, because we need to get some speakers from other countries. Have we lost Sabella now?
I love the multilingual approach. I don't hear much being said about boosting English at a young age, preschool. That to me would seem like an obvious part of the strategy in preschool, boosting English. It seems like English on TVs in any way, and those who do have access to the internet and so on is going to find a lot in English. So that would seem like an obvious part of the strategy, is to just go out of your way to boost English, not to the detriment of the home language. That's the one part. The other big question I had is this: who makes the rule of assessment has to be in English, and what's the sense behind that? Can that be challenged? Or because it seems like, as everybody said here, they teach for testing, which is a huge waste of time, and now the focus is so periodic on different language switches, so the long-term effect is detrimental to everyone. Is that a challengeable issue?
I don't think it's a challengeable issue, but if we have more people who are talking about this all the time, more people are joining me on Twitter, more people are making noise about it, we have a chance. At the moment, we're all just kind of accepting that it's all not working and shame us, and what are we going to do about it? Yes.
Thank you. Regarding the issue of early literacy in English, can you hear me? Yes. I think there are many ways of doing it. It could be through play, it could be through stories, and I think that is happening as well in the lower grades. But I also want us to rethink the role of the home language in strengthening or in learning an additional language. Sorry. Yes, and because if we subtract the learner's home language in favor of an additional language, we might end up with a child who's semilingual, who doesn't know the mother tongue, no. Yeah, and that is what is currently happening with our learners, whom we take as early as possible to English second language schools. There's nothing wrong with that. We are promoting multilingualism. But at the same time, I think they need that proficiency in their own home languages so as to strengthen their literacy in the second language. And coming now to who determines assessment, I just want to share you a brief story about an initiative that we took about 2009. Where I think some of you as principals might be familiar with the language transformation plan. Are you? Yes, it was implemented in 2008-2009 because the government, the Western Cape Department of Education, wanted learners to have strong skills, language skills in their home languages, in addition to learning a second language. We're not saying away with English. Don't get me wrong. But my point is that we must first strengthen the language skills in the home language. And what happened was that with the change of government, that was thrown out. That's the problem. And it was a good initiative in that the teachers themselves were trained on how to deal with linguistic diversity in the classroom. Exactly your point. How do I deal with these learners coming with different languages in my in my classroom? And I think until we take measures as educators who are facing the challenges, we'll end up saying the same thing in 10 years to come. Thank you.
I want to say one thing about a personal experience. So we speak Afrikaans at home. 100%, there's not a word of English spoken. And then we lived in the UK. And we continued to speak Afrikaans at home, but the kids were now confronted with English on television because there was no Afrikaans anywhere else. And when we came back, they were both fully bilingual. Yes. Because they saw television, and the television was sufficient to teach them English, and they had their Afrikaans because we held on to Afrikaans at home very passionately. So I do think there are ways in which we can introduce children to things earlier. Now, we have to go, but is there one last point from the equal education lady?
Thank you, ma'am. It's not a question, but it's more like a comment. I don't know. My problem is I would like, or I would love my children to study in English. But the problem is, at home, parents are less educated or are not that much educated. And who's going to help this child to continue the study in English? Because the parents are not well educated. And another thing, our children, because of that lack of home language, they can speak English, but they cannot translate the words in their home language. That's the problem.
Can I just put in a little comment? Maybe a comment more than an answer, because it's so important. You know, what I've been seeing over the years is teachers trying so hard to get parents to help their kids to read at home. Help your kids to read in English. And I've said, why do you think you're not getting the support of the parents? It's because most of them are not confident themselves in speaking English. But what we're trying to do with multilingualism is to teach children to empower yourselves. You need 2 languages. When it comes to homework, this is where we use the skills of the home and the community. So we don't want teachers to say, help your children to read in English at home. We say, help them to learn in the home language at home. So they take their readers home and they can get the children to read the English, but they must help them read the home language. So they can play all sorts of games. But the support from home must be in the home language. Suddenly it changes the whole dynamic. Parents now see that they can be involved. We're saying the most important thing that you can do for your children is to make them proud of their home languages. That it's a part of them, part of who they are, and teach them those home language skills. We can't even in the subject class be teaching them your accent, because we have Tswana from Brits and Tswana from Rustenburg and Tswana from heaven knows where, and Zulu from Joburg and Zulu from KZN. You have to take control at home. This is your job. Teach your kids to read in their home languages. But you see, if you send those books home, this empowers the parents, because the parents have got the language in front of it, both languages. They concentrate on one. We say, leave us to the English at school. You concentrate on the home language. Same with the maths books. And it empowers the teachers whose English is not that good, who are supposed to be now trying to use English. It empowers the teacher because they have got the dual language. And what they're trying to do is that you've got to get your teachers to understand. We do not expect them to be perfect English speakers, right? The English role model is the text. It's the English that's written that corrects things. And then your electronic, your TV, etc., that helps with the oral. But the parents must feel, and the teachers must feel, that their role is slightly different here. We are empowering them with both languages, not the opposite.
Sorry, but which one language would I empower my parents with? If I have French, which other language would I have to teach to empower my parents? Because I have Xhosa, Swahili, French. How do I've got lots of...
Yeah, so again, just say, work on your own home language at home.
But if I have to present a book for them to be
Right.
able to learn at home.
No, it's this whole business. There are different strategies, and here's a lovely one that Krista mentioned about how communities can help themselves. So we're saying, look for, and teachers, it's like what you can do, and where you've got to get parent support and community support. Try to link in. And what I tried to do, look, I had a failed project, I have to tell you. I had a massive study going that was going to be longitudinal from grade 1 to grade 7. We had 800 children doing this multilingualism. It had brilliant results in maths and in reading. All of a sudden, the kids were learning to read through maths, in fact. But the fact is, in the principle changed, and as I said to Louise, the key changed and we were ditched down the plug hole. The whole project was ruined. But what we were beginning to get success with was linking with the Portuguese community, because this was an inner city school, Portuguese community, the Indian community, I forget which of the Indian languages, but and the French community. We had the Alliance on board. They were going to translate our materials so that we could have the bilingual books, not just in 11 languages, but in English and French, and in English and Portuguese. And that was going to be the way, because otherwise we stuck it in. All our kids can use their own language at an oral level, but not at a text level until we've got more than 11 languages in a bilingual text. But you can. French, Portuguese, get them on board. Get them to translate. The parents love it. Get the parents to translate their readers for them and
So
work with two.
Finish now, we're not going to get to
Wow, what a session. I know that there are still lots of questions in the room and the conversation is not unpacked. And we need to, I don't know if we're ever going to agree on this. There's so much history here. It's about the past, it's about where we are today, and it's about the future. But I think that this is a fantastic place to start, and hopefully the next time we have this conversation, we will have somebody in the room who can help us to weigh in on policy. But then we need to know exactly what we want. So we're not there yet. And so thank you so much to all of you for being here today and for participating. And we just want to say thank you to all of our speakers for bringing your experience and your knowledge around this, and for helping us think through this thing that is not just the problem there in the schools, but it's our problem as a country. It's our challenge. Let's not call it a problem. It's our challenge as a country. And we need to band together to make it.